Congressman, it's good to see you again here. Closing in on Election Day. Give us an honest assessment where you think this race stands right now.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jason, for having me. I think this is a runoff, and runoffs are always about getting folks out to vote again. They've already voted once in this election. We have school coming to an end. We have the holiday coming up and the holiday weekend. So I recognize that we're up against a number of competing factors, but I feel good. I feel good about everything I've been hearing and seeing in the community, the efforts that we're putting to turn out the vote, and we're just going to do everything we possibly can.
You won considerably more votes than your opponent, Julie Johnson, in the March 3rd primary, but that primary also had thousands of new voters coming out to vote in the Senate race here. If those voters don't return, like so many people don't expect them to, where does that leave your path to victory?
Well, I don't think we're reliant on those new voters, but I think it also, of course, is just part of the overall picture that we're trying to paint here, which is that this is a new district, and we have a lot of people who don't even know that they were in this district, Jason. As you know, when you create a new district in December and vote on it just a few months later, in many cases, you're informing people that they can vote in this election. And so that's what we're doing in every way we possibly can. And I feel confident that Dallas knows me, and I think we saw that in the first round of the election where we won by double digits. And so we just have to get folks back out to vote, let them know there's another election. We already had a municipal election this month. I
Yeah.
know that too. But I think in the end, it'll be okay.
But that's easier said than done, though, just to get them back out to vote, considering the bad weather we've had, considering there's a
Yeah.
holiday weekend and everything else.
So true. I mean, listen, this is probably why, I think many states don't have runoffs. We had a big election where there was a lot of, advertising and a lot of interest in it. And so then you have a runoff and you can have, big change in the electorate. But I think we know what to do in this situation. As you know, Jason, I had a runoff in 2018. And so I've been here before. And I think we also know that people are more engaged in many ways than they have been in years past. I've certainly seen that our politics is in your face. You can't get away from it. And as part of that, I think we've seen higher turnout in our elections.
I ran across something getting ready for the interview I thought was interesting here. It's less than 2 years ago, you actually endorsed Julie Johnson. Not a surprise because you were running for Senate at the time, but you said that she has dedication, integrity, and vision. It's less than 2 years ago. Do you regret that?
No, but listen, this is also, of course, in the context of after she'd already been the nominee, was running in a general election. I wanted to make sure that we kept that seat. But then let's also be very clear. I did not expect that she was going to get in office and trade $4 million worth of stock or continue to take corporate PAC money from interests that she said she was standing up against. I certainly didn't think she was going to buy stock in a company like Palantir, who was being used by ICE as part of their mass surveillance operations, and then sell it at a profit while in office. For 6 years, as I think you know, Jason, I never traded a single stock. And I did that even though it wasn't illegal because I thought it was unethical. And so seeing that kind of activity and also going around and talking to folks and seeing that the feeling that this entire system is rigged and that everyone is corrupt is a very real thing that we're running against, not only in this state, but I think in the country. And we have to unrig that and show people that not everyone is corrupt. Not everyone is looking out for themselves. Some people are on your side and just want to serve you.
You've said that Democrats need to be clear about what they're for and what they are against. Give us just a clear dividing line. What separates you from your opponent, Julie Johnson?
Well, as I said, I think there's our conduct in office. I don't trade stock. I don't take corporate PAC money. She does both. But I think it's also just true that I have a record of delivering, creating the Garland VA from nothing, working with the Trump administration at that time to even get that done, but also of delivering $135 million worth of investment to this district. But I think one of the main issues facing us in the South and the entire country right now is the Supreme Court's ruling that has basically eliminated the Voting Rights Act and the subsequent move by state after state, beginning with Texas, to eliminate majority minority districts and eliminate the voting power of Black and brown communities across the South. When I left Congress, we had 6 African American members of Congress from a delegation of 38. If I'm not successful in this runoff, we'll go down to 2. You look at what's happened in Tennessee, in Louisiana, in Florida, what's going to happen in South Carolina. All across the South, we're seeing a retrenchment and a return, really, of a kind of segregation and a loss of representation. That means we need to have a voting rights lawyer and somebody who knows how to go up against us in place. That's what I am. I know how to deal with this. I know how we can get out of this and end this doom loop of gerrymandering. And I can't wait to go fight for that.
But gerrymandering has gotten nowhere over the years. The party that's not in power wants to get rid of it. The party in power says, hey, it worked for us this time.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I think people should know that the last time that when I was in Congress and Democrats had a majority in the House, we voted on a bill called the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act that would have required every state to have nonpartisan independent commissions to draw their congressional districts. That was even though, and many people voted for that, knowing that it probably would have changed their districts or eliminated their districts. And I think we've seen since then how necessary it is that we pass that legislation. It also had in it national standards around early voting, voting by mail, and voter registration that would prevent some of this nonsense we're seeing in Texas and across the South. And so I think it's really important that we pick that bill back up, that we pass it, and that we make sure that we end this kind of competition to see who can race to the bottom fastest, and also whose communities can be most divvied up and divided up. Here in North Texas, we've seen that happen, and I know folks who come up to me every single day who can't believe that the districts and how they've been redrawn. This doesn't have to be this way. We can fix it.
Congressman, your stance on immigration has gotten some attention lately. 2 years ago, when you were running for Senate, you were, talking about tougher border security. And since you started running for this congressional seat again, you're talking about abolishing ICE. Of course, we've all seen what happened in Minneapolis earlier this year, but which one is it?
Well, border security and what we do with domestic immigration enforcement are two very different things. I think every country has to make sure that you have a thoughtful and humanitarian process at your borders and control what's happening there. And I think what I've always put forward is that we have to have a secure border, but one that's consistent with our values. But the way we conduct immigration enforcement inside the country, I've never, ever believed that I'd see anything like what's been happening here. As the New York Times released, this body cam footage of a night of ICE stops, where they show that they're just grabbing any person of color and asking them for their papers, or when we see American citizens being killed in broad daylight, or when we see them going to courtrooms and taking people who are there to try and do the right thing in terms of pursuing, their claim or their issue and trying to make sure they're being pursuing a legal process and ripping them away from their families. This agency is out of control. And we've already seen it also in the fact that they've reduced the training time for the 12,000 new agents that they've hired from 5 months to 6 weeks. And just recently, they had to reverse that because they had to admit that they were putting untrained people on the streets and then sending them into communities to terrorize them. Law enforcement is about legitimacy, and legitimacy comes from the belief that what you're doing is in the interest of the broader community and that folks can trust you. That legitimacy has been broken, and that's why we are not going to be able to repair ICE. We're going to have to form a new agency that folks can trust.
And to make sure I'm clear, lay this out for voters because they've likely seen this as well too. 2024, you said we have to have tough border security. Now you're talking about abolishing ICE. Where are you on border security and immigration here, just to make sure that people understand the dividing line?
Yeah, I'm not sure I ever said tough border security. I think I said we have to have a secure border, and that what we had at the border, particularly for our border communities, was chaos. And that was different than saying that we need to mistreat people. I was very clear that things like what our governor was doing with those buoys and the fact that he was talking about we should be shooting people when they're coming across the border, that I thought that was deeply un-American and outrageous. But I do think every country has to make sure that you have a process that's not chaotic at your border.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought we needed to do. And that's also why I was advocating for the $20 billion that we were trying to pass in the Congress to try and hire more people to make it easier and treat people in a humane way. But when it comes to what's happened since then, that was all under President Biden. Now we're talking about President Trump and the fact that he's built a private army, that they have been given a slush fund by this Republican Congress to hire unqualified people, to train them with very little training, to put them in masks and covering up their credentials, and to send them into communities to racially profile people. And that's what they're doing. And we should just be very clear about this. This is outrageous, and this is reducing confidence in all law enforcement, and our communities are being terrorized. And I can't tell you as a responsible leader that I'm going to be able to retrain these people who've been violating your civil rights, or that I'm going to be able to fix this agency. And that's why I have to say to you, instead of doing that, we're going to have to start over. We've had to do that before in other cases. This is not something that I think we're going to be able to fix.
Let's talk about news of the day for a moment here, too. Big headlines out of D.C. about the Trump administration, or Donald Trump himself, the president, coming to an agreement with the Justice Department to not be audited anymore. And part of the deal is to create a $1.8 billion fund, almost $1.8 billion, to give to people who claim that they might have been victims of the weaponization of government. A lot of people
Yeah.
look at this and say, listen, this just doesn't. Republicans have said they look at this and say, it doesn't smell right. What's your reaction to this?
Well, it's 1,776,000,000, and what they're trying to do is have 1776 be the number.
Yeah.
And I think every Texan should just pause for a second and think about this: that they want to pay the rioters on January 6th who beat up police officers out of this fund, and say that it has something to do with our nation's founding and breaking away from the British state. I mean, it's so ridiculous, and it's been said by some experts that this is the most corrupt action in American history, and I think that there's a good argument for that, because it also includes making sure that Donald Trump and his family and any associated companies are never audited ever again, even though by some estimates he may owe hundreds of millions of dollars in back taxes. On top of that, there's this slush fund of people who he's going to appoint, who then will determine whether or not people were targeted when they, for example, attacked police officers on January 6th. Listen, I was there in the Capitol, and I saw the bravery of those officers. They're the only reason that you and I are talking right now. If they had their way, those rioters would have tried to kill me and my colleagues to overturn an American presidential election. And I cannot believe that we're even talking about this. And every North Texan should be so upset that you can't afford gas, that you can't afford to go out to eat on the weekend. You might be looking at cutting back your summer travel because you can't afford to go wherever you might have liked to go. But at the same time, this president is taking your tax dollars and promising them to these thugs. We should all be outraged by this, and we should all stand up to it. And this is why we have to have a Congress that will actually do its job and be a co-equal branch of government and stand up to this president.
Let me ask you one last question and completely shift gears on this. I learned one thing about you the other day at that campaign stop at the Oak Lawn Library I didn't know. Of all the jobs you've had, civil rights attorney, NFL player, I never knew that you were a bartender on 6th Street. Is that true?
Yeah, I had to get my license in order to bartend, and I bartended here in Dallas as well, at a restaurant. And I didn't want to do something that would be illegal. As you know, Jason, I've been going around the state, but also particularly our community here in North Texas, and trying to go on the job with people and work next to them. Whether it's a grocery store or a restaurant or a bar or a construction site, and hear what their life is like, what they feel they want to see in their leaders. And I think the good news is there's still a lot of optimism about who we are as a state and as a country. But the bad news is that they think that this entire system is rigged and that nobody really sees them or cares about them. And I do. And I want to make sure that I would take their stories with me to Washington. And so that's why I got that license to serve. And who knows, maybe I'll use it again.
Well, we'll find out. Anything else you can think of you'd like to add or point out here? This is the last pitch to voters, really. I mean, we're what, 6 days away?
Yeah, listen, I really just want people to vote. And I really hope that folks will take advantage of the fact that this election will not be like the last one. On election day, Tuesday the 26th, you will be able to vote anywhere within Dallas County. I know there was a lot of chaos in the primary election day, and there may be some folks who are feeling a little apprehensive about it. So if you feel that way, obviously we have early voting, but this time around it's going to be different. Go vote. Find your polling place at DallasCountyVotes.org.
Congressman, good luck to you.
All right. Thank you, Jason.